Hi YouTube, this is Joe Calton with Calton Cutlery. You can find me on the web, caltoncutlery.com. Alright, so, man, I've been shooting a whole bunch of videos lately. I figured since I had the microscope, well, I mean, the microscope always stays on the bench. You know, I had the camera and the TV out. I decided I'd just go ahead and just rip through a whole bunch of, you know, tests and videos that I've been wanting to shoot. I usually keep a list running in my cell phone. I think we'll probably do this for another couple days, and then after that, I honestly need to get some work done. Need to get back to actually making knives instead of shooting videos about sharpening knives and stuff. So we did one on the flattening and reconditioning the Norton, or well, we think it was a Norton coarse crystalline. You know, we used sandpaper and a cinder block and some sand and some stick powder and all that kind of stuff, which was really fun. Then I did kind of the same deal on the fine side, because that was a combination stone. Did the sort of the same deal on the fine side of that same stone, and then did some rope cutting tests at different stages, which was an awful lot of fun. And then last was we took this Natural Whetstone Company soft Arkansas stone, and we went through a whole bunch of tests with it also. Started with one side glazed, and the other side was, I think I took it down to a 50 grit. We looked at it underneath the microscope. We did some sharpened up pocket knife, and then did some rope cutting tests with it also. And then, so that right there is going to lead us into this test today. The star of the show today is a translucent Arkansas from Dan's Whetstone Company. There's the box. Of course, the stone is over there on the microscope stand. And then while we're there, we're not going to do any tests with the Dan's soft and black, but we will take a look at it underneath the microscope. Okay, so we did the test with the Natural Whetstone Company's soft arc, and now we're going to do the same test with Dan's translucent, which is, you know, a hard arc. So so instead of having to do this on every single stone that I have, I think that's going to be a pretty good representation. But this black one looks mighty dang cool up underneath the microscope, so I'm going to have to show you all that. So what I've done today to kind of speed things up a bit is I've already lapped the stone, which means that you guys don't have to sit there and watch me lap the stone, which I think is going to be really cool. Okay, so let's get up here and take a look, since I've already got it focused, at what we've got up underneath the stone here. So we've got this translucent stone. It is an 8 by 2 by ½ inch thick. This might make you cry a little bit, but I picked this up at one of the local pawn shops 2 years ago, something like that, for $10. And it was in really nice shape. The only thing that I did to it was the box. The box is quite a bit thinner than normal. Let's see, yeah, okay. So that's a normally thick box. I thinned it down because they put the ½ inch stone in a normal size box, so it rattled around in there really bad. But yeah, $10 looked like it hadn't even ever been used. Okay, so this right here is the side that I lapped to 220 grit. No, that's about as good as we're going to get, right? I had it focused really good. I need a pointer. There we go. Okay, so the way these natural whetstones work is they're made out of novaculite, which is apparently a form of microcrystalline quartz. Now that I've said all them big words, it probably makes me sound smart, huh? So a man-made stone, like say this one right here, it's the same. It's made out of graded particles. Okay, so like let's say this fine side right here, let's say it's 300 grit. Okay, so they would screen you know, they take like a 300 grit window screen and then drop a whole bunch of grit through it, and then whatever came out the other side, well, then that would be 300 grit or smaller, right? Okay, so then they'd take that and then they'd put it in a mold, mix it up with some binder, which is basically just a glue, you know, compress it to shape, and then either fire it or, you know, let the glue dry, or, you know, however they do that. This is, you know, natural. This is just a rock that came up out of the dirt, and they cut it and they polish it. So, but it's supposed to be a fairly consistent rock. So, pretty consistent grain size, I would guess. All right. Well, this side is finished down to 220 grit. Okay, and it's kind of like the soft arc, where, you know, you've got the same size grit particles, but the 220 grit is, you know, the grooves and the scratch pattern in between those particles. Okay, everything looks nice and sharp. Of course, I just lapped it, spent probably 30 minutes this morning doing that. The hard and the translucents take quite a bit longer to lap than the soft arcs and the man-made India, and especially the crystalline. Okay, yeah, so I took about 30 minutes, lapped this side to 220. Now we'll go ahead and look at the 600 grit. So kind of get that in your head right there. Now remember, the stone's on an angle over there. Okay, so as I focus it, remember we've got these bands where the center will be clear and then the top and the bottom will be fuzzy. And of course this is a white light on a white stone that's also translucent. So here we go, right up in here. You can kind of see, it looks to me like the grain size is the same, which is why I wanted to do this on, why I didn't want to do this on the, you know, this stone, because, you know, that's two different pieces of rock. Whereas this stone right here, it's the same piece of rock, so hopefully one side's going to be close to the other side. And then we're just testing the different grits. Okay, so that looks to me like, you know, the grit size and everything is the same. It's just the grooves in between are a 600 grit, which is, you know, quite a bit finer. All right, so now we can take a look at the stone. Nice looking little stone. I'm not sure what all these little oil droplets are. Might have been, maybe I had some oil on my hands or something. Where's my flashlight? And it is very translucent. It's a nice looking stone. Okay, so we looked at that one. We'll set it to the side. And then just as comparison, while we're looking right here, let's go ahead and look at the side, or the Dan's Soft Arkansas stone. Now, I don't believe that I've ever lapped either one of these sides. In fact, I bought this stone new off of Amazon, and I think I've only used it maybe 2 or 3 times. Now, this one's got more color in it. You can kind of see that maybe the particle size looks about the same, but it's almost like there's more space in between them, though. You know, and then you've got your different colors and everything. Apparently they grade these stones. All the stone is the same, or all of them are the same grit. You know, the particle size are all the same. But the stones are a different density. So like the soft stone is less dense than the hard stones, okay? Now this is the part that looks really cool, this black up underneath the microscope. Since it is a black stone, boy, it really, it just looks, you can see everything so much sharper underneath the stone versus, you know, white light on a black stone versus white light on a white stone. But see how uniform all this is? That's pretty nice for a natural stone. And like I said, I've only used this stone a couple of times, so I can't imagine that, you know, this is you know, swarf and everything in it. But that looks really cool. Okay, so now on to our test. So what we're going to do is the same thing with this stone that we did with the other stones. We are going to take my old beat up Victorinox tinker. Look how probably should have brought another one out so you could see how much I've worn off that blade already. Now I have not sharpened it since the other day when we did the test with the soft Arkansas stone from Natural Whetstone Company. So this should be a soft Arkansas edge. And if I remember right, it was a soft Arkansas edge off of the last test was the stone that had been reconditioned with the Thumbler's pre-polish, which is supposedly like a 500 grit. Okay, so we've got an awful lot of dust on that edge. There we go, that's a little bit better. Okay, and that's a really good spot to be looking at this. So we ended up last video, you know, we were using well, it was this soft Arkansas stone with a 500 grit finish on it, okay? And it really polished the edge. And with that polish, we didn't have hardly any tooth at all in that edge, okay? Now this being a relatively soft stainless steel and taken to a very high polish with no tooth, of course we had to press really hard to get the knife to go through the rope, okay? We had to press so hard, in fact, that you can see that the edge started rolling from the amount of force that we were using to be able to cut through the rope, okay? And this is also at a higher edge angle than what I would normally have on it, just because it's been a while since I laid the edge back and thinned it back out some. So this right here is one of the reasons that I don't particularly care for high polished edges, especially mirror edges. But even this right here is getting to the point. I think I finished off the video saying that I was going to recut this stone down to a 220 grit because this is not something that I'm interested in carrying. Okay, but this is the condition that the edge is in. Okay, so now we're going to come over here. That's right, this right here is the spot that I had you. Okay, so we have our translucent Arkansas. This side right here with the arrow pointed down is finished to 220 grit. This side right here with the arrow pointed down is finished to 600 grit. So, you know, we got 600 grit here and 220 grit here on the same stone, so it should be fairly consistent. Like I said, both of them I finished on nice fresh powder, so they should both cut fairly true to that what they can with, you know, fresh powder. Alright, so now the first impression right there is that actually feels like it's cutting fairly aggressively. It's much finer than, say, a fine India, but it's definitely cutting. It's not just polishing. I mean, look at the swarf right there. It's cutting steel off really nice. I'm going to find a flat spot on the bench here. We're getting kind of close to a burr, so let's go on this other side and bring it down fairly close, and that way, you know, we wear both sides of the knife kind of evenly. Okay, now we've got a very light burr started. We'll bring it a little bit heavier just so that we know that we've got... There we go. Now it's really light. In fact, let's no, we'll go ahead and move the other side first, and then we'll show you what a really light burr looks like. Now the reason I'm staying on the ends of the stone here is because right now we're just doing an awful lot of shaping, right? Trying to get us a burr going. And I'd like to finish off, there we go, now we got a light burr. I'd like to finish off the edge on part of the stone that hadn't really been touched. So let's okay, so now that's a really light burr going right there. I mean, like I said, it's pretty light. And in some places, you know, it might or might not be there. But that's why we're going to go ahead and push it to the other side. Okay. Now we got it moved over. So now let's go ahead and start using the full length of the stone. There we go. This edge is thickening up so much that my normal inclination is to drop it down lower. And I'm not hitting the edge. That's where the burr comes in handy, because it lets you know when you're hitting what you're supposed to be hitting. There we go. Okay, now let's add a little bit more oil, and then we'll shear off that burr. Yeah, we're putting quite a bit of wear on this blade, but you know, honestly, I think it's still got a couple of years left in it. And then at the end of that time, you know, I'll probably just end up making another blade for it. Okay. So let's take a look at this edge that we've done made. Let's go ahead and palm strop that a little bit to get the gunk and everything off of it. Okay. So you can, oh, dang it, the camera timed out. Okay, so you can really see here, let's actually let's back it out a little bit. And I think this has been kind of prevalent in all of these now that I think about it. But you can really see, so this right here is where I would normally the angle that I would normally sharpen that blade to, right? And then this right here is, yeah, should be. This right here is an angle I would normally sharpen it to. So that's where, you know, I say my hand is dropping it down to here. And then here is our actual bevel. And then our micro bevel is this little glint of light right up in here. Okay? So yeah, this edge needs laid back quite a bit, but you can see that we've got pretty good tooth in there, And not only do we have pretty good tooth, but the edges of the teeth look fairly, you know, nice and sharp. This is parts right here is not quite so nice, but back in here it looks really good. Yep. So, I mean, that looks like a fairly polished edge, but it looks like an aggressive, about as aggressive as we're going to get at this grit rating. So, let's go ahead and do some cut testing. Okay, so this is our manila rope. It's one strand out of a 3/4 inch rope from Home Depot. Oh, first, yeah, we got to do the whole, you know, the obligatory. Yeah, it's popping hairs off of Joe's arm, and my arm's getting bald. Okay, so that's about 1 to 2 pounds on the rope. Let's get it to the edge there. Okay, we're about 12 to 13, I think. Yeah, about 12 to 13, so not really a bad edge for that level of polish. So now we're going to go ahead and do 50 cuts. That's 2. Oh, I got to write down 12 to 13 because I'll forget. How many cuts was that? Like 4? Okay, there's 49. Let's cut it all the way off so we get a good clean test there. So that's 50. Okay, it doesn't feel like the edge is rolled or anything. So now let's go for our 1 to 2 pounds worth of holding force there. We're at 17. 12 to 13, so we're at 17. So we're still gaining about 5 pounds of force, you know, over 50 cuts. But our pressure's going up. Now, granted, rope cutting can be quite a bit different from day to day, even with the same person doing it. Which is why it's important to do several runs. Okay. It's still looking to me like this rope, I mean, look how abrasive it is. It's starting to scratch over our scratch pattern. We're still having parts of the edge that's rolling over from the amount of force that we're having to put on that edge to get it to cut through the rope. But it still has a little bit of tooth here and there, but the majority of it is all smoothed out. So let's go ahead and repeat the test right quick with the 600 grit side. Yep, so that's the 600 grit is down to here. And that stone feels real smooth. Still just using plain old mineral oil. This might take a little while to get our burr going here, because that is, I mean, it is cutting, I mean, you can see the swarf on there, but it's doing a heck of a lot more polishing than it is cutting. So, you know what we could do? Let's do this instead. Let's go ahead and get our burr established on both sides of, you know, the coarser side finish here, or the coarser finished side. Okay, and then once we have our burr established, that'll be, you know, our rough work. So then we'll go ahead and go to the finer side and take it from there on the finer side. I might as well just sharpen the part that I'm going to use for the test, because I can already tell that this isn't an edge that I want to carry. There we go. We got a good feeling burr on that side. And it feels good on that side. So now let's keep this handy to wipe my, as fine as this stone is, it's got no place for the trash to go. So it's all floating on top. Okay, so now let's go ahead and move our burr to the other side with this finer stone, or finer side. Okay. Got the burr back over there. Let's do it again on this side, just because you guys will have to bear with me. I mean, the only time I ever go to this high of a grit on a knife is basically a straight razor. Okay, now let's lighten it up. Lighten up our pressure. Okay, now we'll float the surface. And we'll shear our burr off. Okay, that feels pretty good. Our edge is getting, maybe we'll spend a little bit more time looking at it up underneath the scope. And I think this is just going to be one video this time. Yeah. So this right here, you can tell, this is where my hand naturally wants to be, right? On this knife with this narrow of a blade and everything. So I started off here, then we went to the 220 grit finished side, and I, did the whole thing. Then we came back and I started in again right at that same old angle. Well, then went back up a little bit higher to be able to get it go. I was all over the place. But we've got a nice looking micro bevel there, and you can tell this edge is, that's a pretty polishing stone going on there. I mean, look at the difference between the, What am I doing here? Look at the difference in the scratch pattern. I mean, this right here, you can hardly see scratches. Is that because we're at a different angle there? No, we tilt the light. I mean, you can still see scratches, but yeah, they're starting to go away. Alright, let's see how it does on the rope. Or maybe we should do some other tests to make sure it's sharp first, right? Okay, so that is just popping the hairs right off, right? Okay, so that way you know that it's sharp. Let's grab a our old Stickum note from the last test. It's a real nice, quiet cut, nice, clean edges to the paper. So you know it's sharp, right? I think you're going to be surprised at this. Okay, our 1 poundish or so to hold the rope and everything down. We're starting off at 17. Oh, 15. 15. So we're starting off at 15 pounds. That's the highest we've started off with, except for the glazed soft Arkansas. So that's what, 3? That's 40. 48. There's our 50. Okay. I'm not feeling any major rolling or anything, but then again I didn't feel that the last couple of times either. Okay, so we're at 1 pound to hold the rope. $20. Now that's, boy, that's a lot of force there on a cut. $22. $22. $19.50. So we can give it the benefit of the doubt. To $19.50. I think that's the highest. No, the glazed over soft Arkansas went 20. Okay, so now let's take a look at what's left of our edge here. Look at that. Look at all these sections where the edge rolled from all that amount of pressure. Look at how we used to have not really much of a scratch pattern at all. And now that hard rope is putting a pretty good scratch pattern into it. That's pretty interesting. Okay, so let's see if I can collect my thoughts here quick enough for all this. Alright, so first of all, that's a really cool stone, right? Second of all, we can change the, we can't really change the grit size of this stone, but we can kind of change how the stone acts on the steel. Alright, now this being the translucent, okay, which is one of the you know, their hardest and most dense stones. I would kind of expect it to, so if we you know, we use the 220 grit scratch pattern, right? So we can make this stone act like two different stones. So we use the 220 on one side and the 600 on the other side. I would expect that it being a harder stone and more dense, that it would hold that 220 grit aggressiveness for longer than what the soft Arkansas would hold it, because it's a denser and more compact type stone, right? Second of all, even the 220 grit finish on this stone, it's honestly not something that I would use for a carry knife. Okay, you know, we took that same, I threw away our stick-em note from the other ones, but let's see, on the soft arc, we had it down as low as 8 pounds for the initial cut off of, you know, the freshly lapped soft arc with a 220 grit finish. So we can go from an initial sharpness of 8 pounds to make a cut versus this one was 12 to 13 pounds to make a cut. That is a lot of extra force that you'd have to use, you know, to make the cut. And like I said, that's not really the type of edge that I like all that much. I have played with this stone a little bit. This stone and the black Arkansas and the black translucent that I have from Natural Whetstone Company, and they work okay for straight razor honing. You know, that's where you want that polished edge that's gonna, I mean, you saw how easy this one took the hair off my arm. I mean, it was just popping right off of there, right? So for shaving, you know, that's something that I would like. For, you know, an everyday carry knife, where, you know, this knife spends most of its time stripping wire, opening mail. I used it the other day to grab a cutting off of a plum tree so that I can make a couple of new plum trees out of it. You know, that's the type of work that this knife does. It doesn't shave my face. You know, it does kind of detail work. You know, I mean, the stuff that my normal carry knife, you know, my normal one-handed larger pocket knife, this does detail work, whereas this does, you know, mostly rough duty type stuff. And in neither one of those cases do I want that polished edge. But I think this has been a really cool experiment slash video, whichever. We can change the scratch pattern of this stone quite a bit by how we finish it out. I would bet that those guys that like really polished edges would love this stone. Especially if you had, yeah, especially if you were to take like this Dan's combination here, and you know, you finished off the soft at 220, and then maybe finished off the black at 220, then took this translucent stone and then finished one side off at 600, and then, you know, maybe burnish the other side, or, you know, try some of this polishing compound from Thumblers at 1200 grit. You know, that would be an interesting razor combination. And maybe I'll try that in the future, but probably not for at least a little while. So anyway, so I guess take from that what you want to. That was Dan's translucent hard Arkansas sharpening stone at different at 2 different finish lapping grits. Again, this is Joe Calton with Calton Cutlery. You can find me on the web, caltoncutlery.com. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we will see you next time.